Today's top story is brought to you by SAA Voyager Credit Card. Miles more rewards. Well, as promised, Todd Buchholz, former White House economic advisor, MD of the Tiger Hedge Fund. You know that one, Dave? Tiger Hedge Fund?
Yeah, of course.
Is that James Robinson?
Jim Roberts?
Julian Roberts.
Julian Robertson.
Yeah.
Wow, apologies. But he did live in New Zealand for some time.
Yeah.
So we were allowed in
We
South
haven't heard
Africa
his
to
name
forget
for a
the
long
New
time.
Zealand. Yeah. We're not that partial to the New Zealanders. And Harvard University teacher and best-selling author. I had the privilege of spending some time with Todd this afternoon, and it was intriguing to get, given your background, that you are probably one of the only leading commentators in the world who seems to believe that the economic recession in the United States is going to be short and that we can look for a rebound next year.
Well, that's right, but let's face it, the economy is lousy right now. It's lousy all across the world. There's a good reason the Bank of England slashed interest rates 150 basis points today. Bad reason for Mr. Trichet at the ECB only to cut to 3.25%. It's remarkable to me. The Bank of England has now lowered interest rates to the lowest it's been since 1955. The European Central Bank has lowered interest rates to the lowest it's been in 2 years. Is that insane? Is that constant? 2 years ago, was the European economy equivalent to where it is today? Absolutely not. So yes, I'm an optimist in the sense that while I admit that the world economy now is actually sinking, the U.S. economy is being dragged down, I do think the nature of the monetary response from the Federal Reserve Board, as well as some of the dynamics elsewhere in the economy, suggest that the U.S. economy actually can recover sometime next year, as opposed to going down for the Great Depression, too.
You must know that you're in the land of the gold bulls in this country, because we produce still a lot of gold in South Africa. And the gold bulls are saying all this money going into American banks is going to push up inflation.
No. Look, typically, the textbooks would tell you, the Federal Reserve Board and central banks print money, willy-nilly, it leads to inflation. But what the textbooks don't point out is that if that takes place at the same time that the private sector is deleveraging, destroying credit, holding back, what the Federal Reserve Board is doing is merely trying to offset the decrease in the money supply, or technically the velocity of money around the world. So I don't think it's going to be leading to inflation. Inflation outside of South Africa is dead. It's dead. Mr. Trichet should recognize that. Bank of England recognizes that. Bernanke recognizes that. In China, inflation has clearly rolled over. So I think that's not something we need to worry about. Well, not for the next couple of years. You want to talk in 5 years? Fine.
But why do you think the gold price is doing relatively well, 756 today?
Because the market, there's always a debate in the market. There are two paradigms. One paradigm, my paradigm, says printing of money is merely offsetting the destruction of credit, but the other paradigm says, no, that's flat wrong. They're printing money, that's going to be inflation. The best inflation hedge is gold. I can only tell you, based on my judgment, that latter gold bull paradigm is not right. Is it not plausible? It's plausible. I can make the argument too. I just don't think, in my judgment, based on my experience and the dynamics that I'm seeing, that it's taking place. And I think it's very difficult for inflation to start flying off without wage inflation going along with it. And we are not seeing wages going up in the Western world. We're actually seeing wages being compressed, or at least harnessed and prevented from rising.
Todd, you know your way around the White House. There's been a lot of celebration in Africa. Today in Kenya is a public holiday because Barack Obama is going to be going into the place.
Well, we should have known. No one can beat a Kenyan in a race. Of course, Obama was going to win.
Particularly a marathon.
Particularly a marathon.
But need we? Well, even today, Nelson Mandela came out and urged Barack Obama to put Africa's problems at the top of his list of priorities. Is it likely to happen?
Look, the markets are the priorities right now of the world economy, and Africa is obviously a large part of it. And Africa's performance over the last 5 to 10 years has been quite remarkable. But let's face it, the emergency right now, the ship of state is taking on water in the financial markets. And the best thing Barack Obama could do would be to come out and say, those of you who've worried I'm not a free trader, those of you who are pushing down commodity prices and pushing down world equity markets because you're concerned the U.S. is going to erect trade barriers and blame our neighbors, that's not me. Barack Obama, I believe in free trade, just as Bill Clinton believed in free trade.
Does he?
I'm not sure he knows himself. He's very ambiguous. There's very little evidence. We have to, infer, read tea leaves. Same thing about tax rate. The markets are not doing well. Well, of course you want to, if he's promising to raise capital gains taxes, sell now before he gets into office. The best things he could do would say, I'm for globalization, I'm for free trade, and I'm not going to raise taxes on people who've invested in the stock market. I'm not sure he's going to do that.
That would sound a bit too much like Bill Clinton.
And
he won't be following Bill Clinton, you don't think?
Yeah, well, you know what? Bill Clinton's performance in economic policy, if Bill Clinton had only kept his zipper up, he would have gone down in American history with higher regard. But on economic policy, the man did okay. And it wouldn't have been it's not a bad example for Obama to follow.
On either one. Well, I suppose on 50-50 on that one. But what is interesting, sitting in South Africa, watching what's happening in the United States with the bailouts of the banks, it now appears as though other industries are putting up their hands as well. Today, the big three automakers have asked government in the United States to give them money too. Where does this all end?
The big three automakers have been warned since the early 70s that they were not competing effectively against the Japanese. It's been a 30-year going out of business sale, and it's very sad to me, and it's painful. And I don't blame it on union workers. I blame it on mismanagement at General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler for decades, being inferior to the Japanese in terms of quality, fuel efficiency. The problem, it's a political problem. The state of Michigan is in terrible shape. The unemployment rate is very high. Of course, tax rates in Michigan are very high. I think that state has been run in a miserable way for a very long time. Is there going to be some kind of bailout? They tried to do a secret bailout just a couple weeks ago, giving the big three automakers $25 billion under the guise of developing alternative fuel vehicles and better electrical batteries and the like. But it really was just an injection of capital. I think it will be. I think that Congress, especially Democratic Congress, is likely to do further bailouts for the American automobile industry. I think there are too many union workers with jobs at risk. And if the U.S. government bailed out Chrysler, one company, during the 1980s, then I think it's likely there's going to be another bailout for the big three automakers this time around.
We look forward to talking with Todd Buchholz, hopefully from time to time when you're back home in California. And it really was a privilege to have you in our studio today. David Shapiro, a bit of a reality check there.
Yeah, it is.
Particularly on Obama.
Well, he's going to be tested. I think he's coming in. There's a lot of support for it.
What I mean is the celebrations in Africa.
There is a celebration. No, forget about Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. I think that he's got to concentrate at home first, sure.
Today's top story was brought to you by SAA Voyager Credit Card. Miles more rewards.